0. Hello and welcome to our webinar on best practices on DIH Business Services. My name is Thomas Vöguele and I'm with the German Research Center for Artificial Intelligence, DFKI in Bremen. My guests today will be Nico Nienhuis from University of Twente, Christoph Lipiec from PIAP, and Panagiotis Karagiannis from LMS. This webinar is one in a series of mini webinars on best practices in DIH business and DIH services, and it is prepared in the context of the RIMA DIH project, DIH network. In RIMA, we are adopting the DIH classification of TNO, which means we are looking at 3 main categories of DIH services. These are ecosystem services, technology services, and business services. Today, we will look at the business services, and here specifically at Incubator and Accelerator support, access to finance, skills and education, project development, and offering housing. Let's start with the Incubator Accelerator support services. These are kind of the basic services for startups and early stage SMEs. So the target group here is really those companies that just formed, that are not yet able to fly, and the Incubator and Accelerator services provide them the basic requirements to get on their feet. So Incubator services breed the startups and early stage SMEs in a secure and a cozy environment, whereas Accelerator services are more designed to push them during the first stages of their company lives. Of course, the services provided in these categories, they overlap with many other DIH services. But the specific thing about Incubator and Accelerator support is that it provides basic facilities, for example, infrastructure, office space, access to research facilities, access to know-how, both technical and non-technical. It also helps these early stage companies and startups with business plans and business developments. This is in particularly important because many entrepreneurs are very good on a technical basis, but they're not very good in business. It also provides legal support, another thing that entrepreneurs usually not familiar with. IPR, patenting, all these issues that are very important, but not so easy to handle. Then the Incubator and Accelerator services help with marketing. They help identifying target markets, competitors, develop a marketing strategy, and also support the startups in setting up a good PR strategy and PR means, like, and they also include them typically in the dissemination events of the host organization, for example, conferences and seminars and so on. Finally, the transfer of know-how from the staff of the host organization, like graduate students, professors, is an important issue. So these people help the startups to set up their products. And last but not least, access to funding is really something that startups need very heavily, and they are helped by the Accelerator and Incubator services in this. As a best practice example, today I want to show you the Accelerator and Incubator activities at University of Twente, and Nico Nienhuis, who is also in the call today, will give a presentation on what's going on in Twente in that direction. Nico, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Thomas. So I'm gonna share my screen with the right slides. There we go. Thank you, Thomas. Yes, so I'm gonna tell a little bit about how we've created our incubator facilities at the University of Twente. What you see here as a logo, by the way, is also the Novelty logo. Novelty is the Valorization Institute of the university, and I'll explain that a little bit. University of Twente is by far the most entrepreneurial university of the Netherlands, and we have this organized in such a way that we have a specific department which is completely responsible for the support of our young student and researcher entrepreneurs, and to teach them how to be entrepreneurs, to support them in any way possible. And to give them a bit of a background there, in the over 40 years of track record that we have as an entrepreneurial university, we've created over 1,000 startups, and those include names like Booking.com, which I guess everybody knows, but also Takeaway.com, and many other ones. Now, on to the incubator support. What we have found out is that one of the most important things in the very early stage where you're talking about incubation of startups is housing, and to support the ambition of those entrepreneurs. And this starts with the really first step, with people only having an idea and needing a place to work on those ideas. And that's what we call Incubase. So Incubase is really the very early stage incubator of the University of Twente. What we offer is a complete separate wing of a building where there are office spaces, there are programs, support programs, tools, anything to support that really early stage, just you with a new idea, as a target group. That can be students, that can be researchers, anything like that. It's incredibly cheap, but we want to give people the opportunity to work on their idea in a separate place from either their home environment or their work environment. So you can become a member for 20 euros per month. And only members can access this part of that building, so the Incubase wing of that building. This includes all internal facilities, which also includes really good coffee and tea and other drinks. It includes a lot of masterclasses and workshops that we organize almost on a weekly basis. But if you need a little bit more, if you already have a team and you want some private office, you're talking about between 60 and 120 euros per month extra to have a private place within the Incubase facilities. It's important to understand that this very early stage is very short term. We're working with 3-month contracts, and we also track the progress that people show. People really have to do something. They have to work on their ideas. If they don't, if we see that they're not interested anymore or whatever, we cancel the contract and they are not welcome in Incubase anymore. We have some specific support programs here called Start and Advanced, and Start is meant to build these first entrepreneurial skills and competences that people often don't have. So they learn how to deal with a business model canvas, what business models actually are, what the revenue models are, how do you build this up, how do you build this idea up to actually a business that may be viable. And there are, as I already said, a lot of community programs like startup talks where we invite experienced CEOs to talk about how they started their business, and a lot more there. Now, the second step, once you then really become an early stage startup, so you actually become a business, you still have the need for offices, but one step onwards, right? So that's why we have a building called the Gallery. This is normal offices directly on the campus of the university. We still very much consider this as being part of our incubator activities because these businesses only just exist. So it's the next step for many startups, and many startups do choose to remain in their offices and expand their offices as scale-ups. These are normal market conform prices. I would say a little bit below market conform, but still typically normal prices. But for students and for researchers who start a startup or a spin-off, it's very attractive to remain on campus of the university. And in this building, we have 8 different entrepreneurial help desks. 4 examples are listed here, being a direct help desk from a bank, direct help desk from a notary office, from a lawyer's office, and from a tax specialist's office, so that you have the support of everything that you as a starting entrepreneur typically don't know directly in the building. There is one very specific building that we've also created for nanotech startups. It's called the High Tech Factory. Now, these nanotech startups typically have very specific wishes of access to certain facilities. And the main facility here, of course, is clean room facilities to do and make what they have to do and what they have to make. So specifically for nanotech startups, we have the High Tech Factory, which includes an entirely created clean room for these startups, including all imaginable clean room machinery for them to do what they have to do. And also we've created a very specific fund for later on. So this is of course beyond incubation, this is acceleration, but there is a high-tech fund so that nanotech startups can create their own production facilities. It's a very specific investment fund created so that nanotech startups can build their own production facilities. Now, part of our incubation activities, and this is already a little bit towards acceleration, of course, is a voucher program. And our signature program here is called the TOP program. You can apply for the TOP program when you only still have an idea and really are starting your company. It includes a €40,000 loan from the university, a very soft loan. If you default, of course, not because of criminal reasons, but if the company defaults, you don't even have to pay it back. And you get free access to many business experts for 1 year so that you can set up your business properly. This includes tax, law, notary, marketing, etc., etc. And people often say, hey, but the university has to spend an incredible amount of money on this TOP program. And what I have here, and I'm not going to say everything, you can read it for yourself, you can find it online. But the interesting thing is that with this little incentive of a loan of €40,000, which most companies, by the way, pay back, we create a multiplier amount of 19.5 on the funding that these startups typically generate. So the total amount of generated follow-up financing over a period between 2011 and 2018 was €35.5 million. And the only thing we have to do for that is provide loans of €40,000. So it's actually an investment worthwhile the time and the money to create a lot of entrepreneurial activities in your region. The second thing we do is we provide all sorts of knowledge vouchers. These vouchers typically have a value between €5,000 and €10,000. And startups can spend these anywhere on knowledge at the university. Whatever they need, they can spend it on. And altogether, this makes sure that these startups, these people with brilliant ideas have hopefully a soft landing and can spend most of their energy and their time on the ideas that they're actually working on. So if you want to know more, just reach out to me. I hope that I've presented to you at least the core of what we're doing.
Thank you, Nico, for this very interesting talk about the Accelerator and Incubator services at University of Twente. And we switch back to my presentation now. So Nico already mentioned it, finance, money makes the world go round, and money is one of the most important things probably for an early stage SME and a startup. So we will now have a bit closer look at the access to finance services, which may be incorporated in an accelerator incubator environment, but can also be part of other services and standalone services. So the idea here is that we provide in the initial stage SMEs and startups with support with the acquisition of financial assets, and this is mainly to inform them and about financial possibilities and sources, and to bring them together with investors. And also to act as a mediator between the startup and banks, for example, and investors, because most entrepreneurs, young startups are young people, maybe not so experienced with dealing with banks and investors. So this is something where the experienced staff from the host facilities can help. The means to provide access to finance are mainly, to inform about research grants. I mean, third-party funded projects are very interesting also for startups. So we can support them here with proposal writing, with grant applications, and with informing them about which grants are available and where they can submit a proposal. Then we can also support them with organizing contacts to industrial partners, for example, at matchmaking events, or to initiate joint industrial projects with industrial partners, local, regional, and EU funding for SMEs. There are special programs for this, and most SMEs not aware of these programs, so we can support here either with online information or with events, special events online or in personal, and also with newsletters that we send around. We can help with setting up, getting through the formalities that are needed to access mostly regional funds, for example, pre-seed funds and specific startup grants. There's a whole forest of these tools which many startups don't have a good access to. Then we can establish contacts to investors and venture capital funds and mediate bank loans, and also support applications for EU tools. There have been a set of EU tools like the SME tool in Horizon 2020, and there will be new tools coming up in the new framework program. As a best practice example for the financial services, I want to point to Christoph, who will tell us now about the financial services offered by a Polish DIH. Christoph, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you very much. Access to finance is indeed one important service for our hub. And here's how it's organized in our case. So first important part is finding the funding opportunity for DIH customer, which obviously starts the whole service. Then we go with drafting and updating funding roadmaps. Could we go? Yeah, thank you. With funding roadmaps, it's a little bit advanced, a little bit more advanced service for companies who want to cooperate on longer basis with our hub. Then we have finding complementary consortium partners for our project, because quite often it happens that the idea for R&D or innovation project, we are cooperating on needs involvement of third parties, and here our network is a great pool for supporting such projects with partners. Finally, we approach the most important part, which is writing the grant application. This is done by people involved in the daughter company who have many years of experience in writing this kind of proposals. And it's worth to mention here that we focus on R&D and innovation projects only. So what we offer to our customers is a service by a team who spent years on this kind of project. So we don't do investment projects. We don't finance training projects, even though we do organize trainings. However, we don't support financially such projects implemented by third parties. Then, if we are successful, comes the part of negotiation of the grant agreement and signing of the contract. Sometimes it's a process of several iterations that need involvement of our consultants. And when the grant agreement is finally signed, we can proceed to implementation on the project. And on this stage, we provide financial management service for the project and the reporting of the project, because many times, especially SMEs, don't have financial staff skilled enough or experienced enough to handle this kind of task, especially if it's the first project involving public funding. We also, and within this service, there's a special area of competence, which is support in contracting subcontractors, which obviously is very different in case of public funding than companies are used to in everyday business. And sometimes it happens that they would also like to get supported in case of audit of other kinds of control activities, and in such case we can also provide them with the service. And next slide, please. So this slide is called triple win scenario, and maybe I'll start with explaining why it's a triple win. In the kind of service I just described, there are three entities. So one is a consulting company. Second is our institute, which animates our digital innovation hub, and the hub customer. So the consulting company gets a customer that is ready for the services. They didn't have to run any sales activities to get this client. For the client, for the customer, they are often not aware of necessary requirements or necessary competences that a consultant should have. So they somehow base their trust, the relation with the advisor, with the company advising them on funding. They start this relation based on trust with us as the technology service provider and the hub brand. So this way they are sure that they get the service from a professional that is best suited for their needs and focused on the kind of services, the kind of projects, what I mentioned before, that is innovation projects. And the third win is for the hub and the institute, of course, because if our customer gets funded, then they can use other kinds of services which can be financed with this funding. That is mostly R&D, innovation, and general business activities that required additional funding. So the reason for this triangle construction is that, first of all, we as the entity running the Digital Innovation Hub do not, from the legal point of view, we cannot provide this kind of services. It's not listed in our registry. Then if we wanted to do it for free, then it would be it could result in tax and other consequences in the area of state aid, for instance. Because this kind of service is not rooted in any formal state aid network, it's just a service, and it cannot be just financed from public funding. And then if us as a research institute would like to get involved in a project as a subcontractor, we cannot consult at the same time, because that may result in a conflict of interest. And next slide, please. So now that's the last and the shortest probably of my slides here. It's a revenue model for this service. So the first fee is the flat rate for proposal writing. Then we have the success fee in case we are successful with this proposal, and this fee also includes all support at the stage of negotiations and signing of the proposal. And if the company, it doesn't always happen, but in most cases, the customer who is happy because he received the funding, he would also like us to financially manage the project, and then we have a monthly fee for this kind of service, so they can resign anytime they feel that they've learned enough to continue on their own. And finally, we have hourly fee for any additional services that might occur, like audits, control, and this kind of situations, which I mentioned further. And one last comment on this, of course, if we are a consortium member, then or any other kind of partner involved in implementation of the project that is financed from public funding, then obviously different rules apply, because in such case we have our own interest in making a project successful, and then it's not considered state aid, because we are in our own interest. So that's all on my behalf. Thank you very much, Thomas.
Thank you, Christoph. That was very interesting indeed. Okay, so money is one issue, and skills and education are another issue. Skills and education services of DIHs, they address not only SMEs and startups, but also a quite wide range of partners in the ecosystem. This can be ranging from students to industry representatives, and even representatives of the public agencies and policy. And it has to be clear that each of these target audiences has another requirement and needs is interested in another topic related to inspection and maintenance robotics. So entrepreneurs and students are most likely to be interested in business and soft skills. They want to know how to set up their business, and what's needed from business skills, where they're probably very familiar with the state of the art in robotics. This is different, for example, for developers, system integrators, and end users that are working with robots or have been working in the way from university for some time, and now need to be taught about the advances in research and technology and the state of the art that is available at the moment. And decision makers and the public, they are interested in seeing what are the new trends, what are the opportunities that are out there. So all these three kind of levels of education are on quite different levels of technical content, and so for each of these you have to customize your presentations and your teaching material. And you really have to, before you start doing some webinars or some classes, you really have to look at your target audience and try to come up with a content that suits this target audience and gets the interest of this target audience. To do the teachings, there are a lot of different suitable forms. Of course, the classical forms like courses and seminars, and I hope that with the end of the COVID pandemic, we will have more of those again. But of course, workshops, online webinars like this one are also quite usable, and maybe reach a wider audience because it's easier to get to get in contact and to join with less effort. Things that require a bit more effort are boot camps and workshops, or even internships and traineeships. So you can send people to traineeships into companies, and that will require a significant amount of time, but of course it will give them a lot of insight in these companies. To set up the courses, the training materials, you can resort to resources on the web. For example, RIMA has developed a set of of courses that can be used. There are also other sources. It's always important to consider IPR and privacy issues when you do these courses. And as an example, for a best practice example for teaching and education, I will now hand over to Panagiotis, who will present the teaching factory that is run by LMS in Patras.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Thomas, for the introduction and for the hard task that you have undertaken so far. So I will grasp one sentence that you mentioned, that our aim is to try to bring students closer, let's say, to the industrial reality, as you very correctly mentioned. And let me say as a start that this idea came from the medical profession, where medical students are having courses in hospitals. There are a lot of university hospitals also here in Patras. We have a university hospital, and a lot of students in the medical school are able to see a lot of events in the hospital firsthand, and especially in the last 2 years of their studies. So they are attend many clinics, and they see real patients and the reality of their profession, let's say, and they are prepared about what to expect once they receive their degree. Unfortunately, we as engineers were not so lucky to be able to be very close to the manufacturing industries for many reasons. And we try in LMS through this concept of teaching factory to bridge this gap in the best way possible. So the aim of the teaching factory is to use ICT technologies in order to bring in the classroom, keeping safe the students, let's say, industrial problems that come directly from the factories, from real factories. So in this way, using ICT tools, we don't put the students, let's say, into any danger that they may not be aware about in the factories. And at the same time, we're not restricted by requiring industrial facilities near to our university, as is the example of the medical school. So next slide, please. Great, thank you. So what is the approach? So the approach is to try to produce knowledge based on 3 main pillars. So these 3 pillars is the research on the one side, the education on the other side, and the innovation on the third side. So we have three main actors: the researchers, which are usually PhD students or postdoc students, innovators, which are engineers from the factories, and education. On the education part, we have the students and the teachers of the university. So from the one side, we have a lot of changes that take place in the factories, and the manufacturing technology expands very quickly. So let's say the knowledge that we receive in the university should try at least to keep up with this change. And for this reason, through the teaching factory paradigm, we bring every year different industrial problems into the academic classrooms, giving the opportunity to the students to see and think on problems that they will need to face later as engineers. So next slide, please. How we do this? What is our implementation activity for this concept? So first of all, we have a smaller scale application of the teaching factory. So since this is a, let's say, not so mature concept, we organize a smaller team of students. We organize them in teams, in small group teams, and in the classroom, we discuss different industrial problems. Typically, each team has a different industrial problem to tackle. So there is an initial discussion of the problem. The problem is presented by the industrial partners. Then the students in groups are thinking on the problem, and they try to find a solution on this problem. They propose the solution to the engineers of the factory, and then the engineers, using of course their experience, get back to the students and give them feedback: what can work, what cannot work, and why is that. And following this discussion, then the students go back to their team, and now with the new feedback, try to reshape their idea and reshape their solution. So as you can see, this is a constant circle that goes throughout the whole semester, that typically is completed every week or every other week, where the students are discussing with engineers from the factories. And at the end of the semester, there is a final project report that is provided by the students to the engineers of the factory. Next slide, please. Thank you. So I have 2 more slides, and I will not take much more for your time. What are the benefits of the teaching factory concept? So starting for the benefits from the academic side, this is a new experience, both for the students, but also for us, for the researchers and the professors, because it is a great opportunity for everyone to be in constant contact with the industry and the industrial needs. So for sure, we gain a lot of experience. Also, we try to approach this as a new teaching concept. So not just providing theoretical lectures and solving problems, theoretical problems that exist in the handbooks, but also try to provide real problems to trigger the minds and the thinking of the students at the same time. Also, students are able to deepen their knowledge in engineering topics by seeing real-life problems. So not again seeing a theoretical problem that exists in the handbooks, or by attending a small experiment in a lab environment, but they see real industrial problems and they try to think as engineers and they try to act as engineers. This means that they have to respect some deadlines, they have to respect the restrictions and the problems, the legislation, for example, restrictions that exist in the real life industry. Also, what we have seen in the past is that the suggestions, there are some very good suggestions and out-of-the-box thinking from the students that the engineers from the factories, typically working in R&D departments of a factory, are taking this idea and trying to bring it from the academic environment closer to the industrial practice. So this helps both students and researchers to have a direct contact and touch with the industry. Also, there is also an alignment between the industrial and the academic research. So both from our side as academic researchers and the engineers from the R&D departments of the factories are aligning their orientation, the research orientation. And last but not least, there are new ways of thinking and new solutions are proposed to the companies. As I said, a lot of students are not, since they don't have the experience of the engineers and are not thinking, let's say, solutions that they have already seen in the past, they can offer truly innovative ideas out of the box. Next slide, please. Also, from the other side, from the factory, from the industrial point of view, there are benefits. So, as I said, there are some truly inspirational ideas and solutions. We have seen a lot of times students to provide such ideas and solutions. The industrial partners have the opportunity to see a wide range of solutions that are proposed to their problems. So as I said before, the students are divided in teams and they can try to solve different problems, but there are cases that they try to solve the same problem in a different way. So the industrial partners can see and listen different ideas and different approaches for the same problem. Another bullet that I have already mentioned is the out-of-the-box thinking, because the students have a very big problem-solving capacity. They don't have the experience and the knowledge and the restrictions that the industrial partners have, but this also helps their imagination, if I may say, free, in order to think out of the box and use this lack, let's say, of knowledge in a beneficial way. Also, there is a new way, the teaching factory is a new way to outsource problems from the factory in terms of resources. So use the students as resources instead of just using the industrial engineers and operators, as well as for the academy as a whole, which is able to access the real industrial needs. And last but not least, there is a more critical approach in terms of the content that is provided by the students to the industrial partners. And I think if we go next slide, this was the last one.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Panagiotis. Thanks very much for this explanation of your teaching lab. That's very interesting. We're almost out of time, but I will just go through the next two categories very quickly, and we have a bit more. It will last a bit longer. So if you can, please stay tuned. Otherwise, yeah, you probably have to get the
session is recorded, so we can
slides later on. Yeah. Okay. So the next category is project development. And here, this is one of those services that is dedicated not only to startups and SMEs, but also for larger companies. Because of course, in your ecosystem, you have not only startups and SMEs, but also larger companies, and these can also be involved and brought together with research organizations or with startups to form consortia. So in interesting projects. These services do overlap with other services which we will have in other in the next webinar: community building, ecosystem learning, and strategy development. Of course, they are based on an understanding of the DIH host of your organization, of the stakeholder needs and possibilities. So what companies do you have in your ecosystem? What are their competencies, and what projects could you develop with them? And of course, here is also interesting that especially in a network like RIMA, we can use and leverage connections outside of our own DIH, and so we can match the needs of our own companies and our own DIH partners, if you want, with capabilities outside of the network, outside of the DIH and student networks. How to do project development? It's mainly looking for funding opportunities for new project ideas, and then connect two companies and connect companies with each other to form consortia. And once the consortium is formed, there often is industrial and SMEs often need a lot of support with proposal writing. So even if the call is dedicated to, for example, SMEs, you may need to write the proposal for them. Otherwise, they wouldn't do it because they don't have the time, they don't have the experience, and to do it. So this is something you can support through your RTO or your DIH infrastructure. And then, of course, later on, contract negotiations and are important. And what's also important is to acquire funds for project development. Often there are regional funds that support project development. Specifically in Germany, we now have often these two-stage proposals, two-stage where you get even quite considerable funding for the first stage of writing now a big proposal. This is very comfortable and very nice. As an example for best practice, I wanted to list ourselves here at DFKI. We have this so-called project acquisition and administration services team, which is a team of experts that is dedicated to really helping develop projects. So what we do is we scan through all the calls and we try to identify calls that are interesting for us. They're also interesting for other players in the DIH, and then we contact these players and try to establish joint consortia with them. And then we often support them in proposal writing and even coordination of projects. If, for example, EU projects, this is also something that a lot of these companies cannot provide, cannot do. And our business model at the moment is that we don't charge a fee because we want to be part of the project consortium. We will see how this develops later on. If we push for projects that we not included, then we may also charge fees like PIAP did that for different services, different fee schemes. Yeah, so, and last not least, the last service was dedicated to offering housing. We already heard a lot from Nico in Twente how housing is provided there. It is really an important thing for early stage startups. There are companies that provide startup housing professionally in Berlin. There were quite a few of them. It's an international business model. You can rent space there quite cheaply. And the nice thing about these office spaces for startups and SMEs is that they really form, they create kind of this creative environment and also a certain, cluster of innovation. So it is really not a bad idea if you go and offer housing to your startups, then to do it for several of them, so they can kind of work together and exchange ideas and create new bonds, if you want. It is important for them to have this low cost ability, low cost opportunity, because they really need all the money they have in the beginning to spend on project development and other important issues, and don't want to put it into housing. On the other hand, there are some there's some philosophy that people who start a company, that they rent a big office and have a big make a very nice office logo, and have a lot of things that make them respectable, even if they cost a lot of money, so that they can kind of become a respectable business partner. And this is, of course, you can do it this way, but it's an expensive way to do it, and it's risky. So this is something that really is a big benefit for startups if they can get housing close to an academic institution and in a very respectable and representable business environment. They can have meetings in really nice meeting rooms. They can invite customers and so on. So it gives them a much better reputation and much better look than if they sit in some kind of basement in a suburb or something like this. So this is really, I think, an important aspect for offering housing. On the same time, having a lot of creative young startups in your facility also kind of gives you a very good reputation as an innovative company, innovative RTO. And so I think it's also here a win-win situation between between hosts and startups. I had here a slide on Twente, which I don't want to present again. I think we did it already. And another best practice example, and this is also the last slide of this presentation, is that is in the Danish Technology Institute. They have also very nice rooms and very nice facilities which they offer to startups. They have this. They even give them housing for up to 2 years for free, but they also have vouchers for technical and non-technical support. And again, I think these voucher systems are quite nice because they really, it's a targeted way to support SMEs. And the startups and SMEs that are hosted there, they are involved in DTI activities and events. So it's this win-win situation where one profits from the other. So with this, I want to thank you very much for listening. Sorry for the technical hiccups and the unexpected problems we had. I hope we do it better next time. But yeah, we're over time already. But if I'm available for discussion. I don't know about the other speakers, so please, yeah,
There are
ask
no
your questions.
questions right now, so I think we can finish on time, Thomas.
Okay. If there are no questions, then again, thanks for joining today. Thanks for listening, and I wish you a nice evening. Goodbye.